Hey everybody, good to see you again. We're here to talk about AI and how AI can improve efficiency. And what I want to do to start right now is to give the audience a bit of an introduction to each of your companies. So Daniela, I'm going to start with you. Could you tell us about why you launched Define.ai and what problems you were hoping to help solve?
Well, to start, we are the largest marketplace of training data for AI, ethically sourced. And I started because I spent 7 years with Microsoft building conversational AI in 26 languages. And it was very obvious that we had a scalability problem for data sourcing, basically. So we were working at Microsoft with several service providers. Microsoft itself had a fairly interesting crowdsourcing platform, but it was not able to work consistently across the more sophisticated tasks in language and multilingual acquisition. So that was the original idea. This was 2015. The world in the United States was exploding with builders of AI building more cognitive services, and that's how I started Define AI.
Okay. Thank you. And Igor, tell us about Tractian and how you got into using AI for equipment condition monitoring and asset management.
Sure. So Tractian is the largest industrial monitoring company in Latin America today. What we do, we help companies like Embraer, John Deere, Hyundai, many other industries in predicting when their assets are going to fail and helping them to plan their maintenance more wisely. And I founded the company about 4 years ago. I was originally a PHP developer, so I had a fixation in my childhood to be like Mark Zuckerberg, and I was entering his story, and I found out that he was a PHP developer, so I thought, I'm going to learn PHP because of that. And then I created a inventory management system when I was 13 years old, and I was working already, manufacturing in my childhood. I was working with Portuguese automotive manufacturers via Skype because they couldn't know that I was a child. But that's basically it.
And I wouldn't mind just kind of walking through sort of how your technology works. Like in my head, I'm imagining that Tractian's technology kind of works like a very sophisticated check engine light in my car. Can you give us some examples of sort of how you apply your technology?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of things we talk about generative AI today was just basically an AI that spits a creation like LLMs, language models, and then you're creating things with AI. But honestly, the majority of AI is something that you need to analyze and diagnose and give a direction to the user. And this AI is embedded in many ways in software worldwide. What we do essentially, we go very deep into the technician's mind that operates that machine, providing them an assertive way of knowing exactly what's happening with their machine. So it's essentially an AI for an X-ray telling, hey, there's a tumor here, XYZ. We do the same with machines. There's a misalignment in this motor. There's a lack of lubrication in this hydraulic pump. So you know exactly what's happening, where it's happening, so that you can avoid downtime. Because essentially, downtime is what it costs the most, more than the maintenance. So the real cost here is like the lack of production because of your operations are stopped.
So I've got a question for both of you. Like, we're going to start with some really general questions, which is, when was the first time that you realized that AI could be used to make work, either in an industrial setting or an enterprise setting, more efficient?
Well, coming from a cognitive services background, I've been in AI for 22 years. The first time was in the dictation of European Portuguese. I was a researcher back then in Portugal. And so it became very obvious that content, voice content, talks like these, TV shows, and so on, had to have the content transcribed. And the process of transcription, even journalists collecting interviews, this process of transcription used to be manual, with a person literally going back and doing this job. Speech recognition was a game changer for this type of work. So this is a good example actually of AI that reduced that kind of job and nobody regretted it. So,
you know, essentially you have to work backwards and forget about AI and these buzzwords. Like essentially your user doesn't need to know that you're using AI. You can be using humans, really. Like, essentially, it's just going to be more expensive, right, and probably more inefficient. But for the users, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? And is this problem solved by technology, by AI? But essentially, your user wants an assertive diagnose of something. If you're using ChatGPT and you ask, you know, who's the president of France, like you're trying to have the answer. You're not trying to have the AI. It's untangible. So you just gotta really focus on, like, what problem you're going to solve, and then just the technology is the least important, honestly.
You know, you hit on generative AI right there, and what I want to do is zoom out, because so many people on the consumer side of things right now in the last 4 or 5 months are now, you know, they're being exposed to AI models and AI tools that consumers were not really exposed to before. But there's so much more that, you know, these tools and models can do. And so, you know, what other areas do you guys think, you know, that AI could be used to help efficiency that are outside the scope of generative AI that is making headlines all over the world right now?
Well, I see, for example, a lot of opportunity of automation in everything that has to do with airport flow. That's because I honestly go through a lot of them in the world. And so things like validation of your documentation. We already have facial recognition in most of the borders. But that's only usually applied for the citizens of the country. I know there's a lot of data privacy concerns in exchanging private information from one country to another of its own citizens, but that is a huge bottleneck in customs every time we go to a different jurisdiction, essentially. Other areas is really in the actual purchase. You are on the go. You are on the go. You're not in the airport expecting to be served with all the proper customer experience. You want to buy things quickly. You want to move around. So anything that could be machine operated, a little bit like the Amazon Go model, which is not so common maybe in Latin America, but or even in Europe. These are so small, easy things that can actually are not yet very well outside of the generative model that can be very fast.
I would say anything that is human operated, repetitive, and inefficient. I'm not going to spit out ideas here because I'm pretty sure you guys have better ideas than mine. I already have mine. I'm building it. But essentially, like, just focus on those 3 areas that can be operated, and generally probably the areas that people fear having their jobs replaced. Those are really where AI is going to do a massive change, and then you're always going to have that moment of getting that person that was there previously. If you think about AI for X-ray, it's been there for a while, and the medicine has not yet been approved for that, just because of the fear of replacement. You have many studies that analyzing X-ray with AI is just more efficient. But the X-ray analyst fears being replaced. You know it's going to happen. It's the question of when it's going to happen, but you're working on something right there.
And that actually leads me to another question that I wanted to ask, which is, you know, a lot of people do worry about being replaced. Do you imagine, you know, any ways that AI, machine learning, that whole series of schools of thought can enhance life for workers in traditional industrial, manufacturing, or even medicinal settings?
Yes, but I think we're living a different AI era now. It's just very much like the Industrial Revolution. A lot of jobs are going to be replaced. A lot of people are going to be displaced. And I'm not sugarcoat this because I think like we are going to completely erase positions that were once there. Those peoples are going to be out of jobs, and we are increasing inequality here. So we have to make sure that we are creating efficiency. We are making the jobs of high-skilled people better. You're thinking about valuable tasks that you're doing. But a lot of people are going to be... Just think about AI for Uber. What happens tomorrow when cars go full autonomy? What are all those Uber drivers are going to do? It's, we are just increasing inequality, honestly.
Daniela, do you have any thoughts on that?
In the short term, yes, we are going to displace a number of repetitive, unskilled jobs, but there are still, and low-paid jobs. But in the longer term, the benefits of, for example, I try to look at the glass half full and not half empty, because areas like education, areas like healthcare, with AI now you can actually have the primary care taken care of in remote locations in Africa, remote locations in developing countries, which you wouldn't before. Not just because of course you require some level of 5G connection, but it's probably, but it's easier to do that than actually multiply the number of doctors and nurses to cover all these areas in a growing population world. We have to understand that we surpassed 8 billion people in the world. This keeps going. This poses another problem in the sustainability angle, but we cannot handle that. The other area is aging. Aging population can be now monitored through robots, whether they are physical there or just wearables, which again can give a much more accurate and 24/7 control of people that are not going to have placing in assisted living. Because again, in developed countries, aging of population is going to reach very serious numbers, which people, I don't see that concern being so raised, and we are heading really into that direction. And the part of education, a lot more access to education worldwide, whether you were not lucky to be born in a developed country, you will now start being able to have access to programs that are even personalized to you, depending when you are.
I really like the examples of people who are in sort of remote or far-flung communities. In Canada in particular, we have a lot of Indigenous communities who are in the north who they require fly-in services, and to access simple medical or government services is an enormous burden, and yet, to sort of give them greater access to those things, I think would allow society to become more equitable. So that's a very good point. I also wanted to talk to you about the market for data and models, because I know that's the area that you work in, Daniela. Do you think there's a gap at all, or that there was a gap that you're trying to address now with the market for data sets for AI?
Well, all AI starts in data. So this is why I started the company. Data comes from different sources. You can source it through launching a product that is apparently free in your phone, and then you start using the product, that you get user data, and usually that's the advertising model. So that's a way to get data, and we know what's been doing. It's actually, there's a lot of criticism around the paid advertised model. You don't get the information you want. You actually get the advertisers selling you something. And worse, on social media, The Social Dilemma on Netflix, that I highly recommend everybody to watch, goes down into the mental impact on teenagers and especially girls, on how that actually takes that down very, very deep. So there's simulated data. So now that's live data, and it's full of PII, and meaning private information. But you can have another way, which is simulating data, just like we do, crowdsourced, paid for. You actually are bringing people to the AI world, but by paying them. We, unlike our competitors, are all about keeping the wages within the cost of living and adapted to the skill set that we're requesting, consent, and so on. So, and then there's synthetic data, the third category of data, which most of customers are still skeptical around, because they think that's not as good as the real or simulated. But the reality is an NVIDIA CEO has huge hope on synthetic data. There's a lot of companies starting on synthetic data. It really gives you a trustworthy, clean slate, no PII involved, and it allows you to fill the gaps on models that are basically will never have representation of that type of data. So the data world is here to stay and to continue, especially now that regulations on data privacy are starting to be more active across the two sides of the Atlantic, the US and Europe.
And privacy was what I wanted to ask about next, actually. Just quickly, I mean, synthetic data is something I've written about. It's something that I think a lot of organizations are not really familiar with. But, even just beyond that, could you kind of walk us through the privacy protections that you sort of embed in your systems, for the citizens that you're working with?
Absolutely. So we basically produce this. Our data looks like real data, but it's all. So we crowdsource people. We send campaigns through our Nevo platform, which is a platform of crowdsourcing, just like Uber is a platform of crowdsourcing as well, by the way. So we screen, we send campaigns of advertising to basically job offers, temporary, on hourly paid, but job offers. This is the other side of AI, actually. If some of more permanent jobs will disappear, more temporary jobs will appear, precisely because humans in the loop will be always necessary to improve AI. So we source the people, we screen them, we test them on the skill sets that they need to be tested, whether it's on language or on astronomy. Now with generative AI, we are hiring masters, PhDs in disciplines that are able to give questions and answers to very sophisticated questions, unlike ChatGPT, who can only go so far because it crawls the web and it doesn't go to the actual specialized domains unless it's on the web, right? So this is what I'm saying. So these people go through microtasking, whether they record their voice, they simulate, they role play, or they do a labeling of a video, and we aggregate all of this. And everything is paid for. We have a partner data coming in our marketplace too. So partner data may have PII, but what we do is anonymous. Well, after clearing the legal consents, we have techniques of anonymization of the data, morphing of the voice, which changes the patterns of the voice, and or even replacing, chunking, replacing, so the data will never trace back the individual, whether it's from partner data or from crowdsourced data.
Okay. So we've only got a couple minutes left, and I know we have a lot of founders in the audience. So what I want to know next is, I understand that both of you have raised financing lately, and we're in a pretty widespread downturn. So what is the funding environment like for this sort of the world of applied AI?
Hottest than ever. I think all the money has been shift from crypto and Web3 and all this bullshit, and now it's going towards AI and generative AI. So if you're really in this space right now, it's going to be hottest than ever. But honestly, there's good space for funding. Whenever you have good revenue retention, low churn, and you're in a massive market, you're always going to be able to fundraise. So essentially, that's it.
Well, I don't have the same opinion.
We're playing the devil here.
That's good.
So
This is the benefit of a panel.
Raising last year, like I did, it was actually 16 million, was horrible. Because the markets plummeted, the customers were more conservative in spending, so pretty much in all the industry, all tech industry, revenues came down, including ours. By revenues coming down, your valuations also go down. I mean, I remember seeing the valuations in AI used to be at 10, 20x of your revenues before the pandemic. They went to a 3 to 5x, very conservative numbers, and we're not totally recovered from that. I mean, of course, I can explain how I did it, but talking with 1,000 people always, I mean, on top of it, I'm a female CEO, which takes me 5 times more investors to speak with than my male peers. Only 2% of women founders get VC capital in the world, just the parenthesis here. But that said, there are other ways. So what I discovered was that there are grants, and we got a 15 million grant from the government of Portugal to develop a product, which is 75% granted by the government, 25% is by the companies. There are grants, there are convertible debts, which is debt that is not great, but there are other ways of, it's just to say that you got to be creative. There's strategic alliances. We're also doing one that we hopefully can announce soon. And this way you are together with another company pushing a different source of valuation and product to raise for that kind of product. So you gotta account for all of these options, indeed.
You know, just based on what we've talked about today, I'd love to cast ahead a little bit to the future. You know, how widespread do you imagine these sorts of enterprise or industrial-based uses of AI are going to be 10 years from now? Is there anything you think we're not thinking about, the public isn't thinking about right now, or any trends you think are going to happen in adoption rates?
Sure. The thing is, at Y Combinator, Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, he says that what's going to replace Google is unlikely to be a search platform. It's something that I don't have the answer. Otherwise, I would be doing it. But we think about, what is the next Microsoft? It wasn't a desktop software company. So what's the next Google? It's not going to be Bing. It's not going to be all those search platforms fighting for each other. It's probably going to be something that nowadays we don't have any idea of what is going to be. ChatGPT gave us an idea, but it's still very, very small look into the future. And probably 10 years from now, we'll be looking back and how we didn't think about it. There's timing, there's technology, there's model evolution, many things like that. But for sure, we are, I think as founders in general, we overestimate the short term. Always. We think the next Facebook is going to be tomorrow, and the next social media and so on. And we are terrible at looking at the long term. We always underestimate the long term and the impact 5 years from now of what's going to happen in the market.
All right. Daniela, we've got about a minute left if you'd also like to share any predictions that you might have.
Well, I will not get into the manufacturing segment because it's not so much where I operate, but I think we're gonna, first of all, the generative AI completely skyrocketed the development of AI, which was not, I mean, I keep saying, if you asked me this last year, I would have said it, we're 10 years behind getting here. I think the big revolution will be the multimodal interaction and the feeling that you're interacting with machines, and actually the not understanding if you're interacting with machines or with humans, because I keep saying we got to the level of artificial general intelligence. We are at the level where machines are as smart as humans, and you already see it. You have the deep fakes. You have the, we have my own. We have the text-to-speech voices that are unrecognizable from original. You're not gonna understand whether you're speaking with a human or a machine, and that is the awesome thing and the scary thing at the same time.
All right, a very optimistic note to end our session. Thank you so much, Daniela, and thank you, Igor. Thank you, everyone, for coming out today.